Hey, welcome back to Let's Make an Atari Game. This is part 3, so I've made a lot of progress with my game, and I'll show that first, and then I'll show you what tools I'm using to make this game. So first of all, well, you can kill monsters. I don't think that was in before. The levels are completely random now, and there is a stairway down on each one. So if I explore the level, okay, nothing in that one. And there's a skeleton, I could just kill him. If I explore the level, I'll eventually find that stairway. The stairway isn't much to look at right now. When I come across two monsters, and if I move around, they'll start, these, just for testing purposes, can shoot arrows at me. You see how my guy flashes when he gets hit? It took like a week to work out the best way to make him flash. So they could flash as well, and I wouldn't use up too much cartridge space with this thing. Anyway, he flashes, and they flash too. Probably can modify that a bit, but for now, it works. Okay, next thing. Oh, dead end. Come on. That's the stairway right there. Another thing you can do now is select which monster you want to attack. Before, it would just attack the closest one. So if you double tap the fire button, like that, I can switch between which one I want to attack. Just in case there's a dangerous monster in one of these rooms and I want to attack them first. This only works for ranged attacks. You can also just walk up and hit them, like this. That kills them as well. Right now, all the monsters die in one hit. They don't have any health at the moment. What the player does, if you look down at the bottom left, as soon as he gets hit, something starts coming off. That's his life bar. And that score down there, that's just for debugging at the moment. That won't be in the real game, or the finished game. Now if he loses all his life, well, it just wraps around. And it's back. The right side bar isn't used yet. I might not use it at all, I'm not sure. So you can also melee things by just walking up and smacking them like that. So it's feeling more like a roguelike. Alright, let's go through these stairs. All it does is generate a new dungeon, so now I'm in a new dungeon. Now, the things that were taking so long, well, this selection, that was so tedious. But I felt like you really needed to have it, so I put it in. The next thing I have to do is inventory management, so that's going to be no fun at all either. But it's starting to feel more like a game. I mean, there's no challenge at all in this. But there are random dungeons, and there's random monsters. And they can attack you. They can even attack you up close without shooting you. They get close enough. Oops, I killed him. Well, look, it's possible, trust me. Oops, I killed him. Anyway, you get the idea. Oh, 3 blobs. Now, all these monsters, they all behave the same. They just look a little bit different. Man, I gotta turn off that range attack. That's really irritating. You want to be in a bunch of room with archers. Well, anyway, I was testing the range attacks, and apparently they all work. So one of the problems I was having with this was that when you put too much code in an Atari game, or in one frame, when it's trying to display the screen will bounce. And it doesn't bounce so much in this emulator that I'm running it in, but it was bouncing on real hardware. So I took about a week to sort through all that bouncing. I'll show you how you run it on real hardware in a minute. Alright, so that's the game so far. I've got about 8K left. And that's quite a lot for an Atari game. But I need to make this inventory management thing where you can select different weapons and items and things. And I'm a bit worried about how much space that's going to take up on my cartridge. Oh, die! Shoot him. There. So here's how the button works. One tap obviously shoots your arrow. 2 taps, that selects which enemy you want to target, if it's not the default one. And when you hold the button down, you can access your inventory. For now, you can't do that, so. You only get one button on an Atari, so you kind of have to be a bit creative with it. You could use the buttons and switches on the actual console, like the difficulty switches and things like that, but nobody wants to walk up to their console and hit a switch to play, bring up their inventory in their game or something. Alright, so that's the game so far. It's almost a game. It's a really dull, uninteresting game, but it's pretty close to being a game. Now, what tools do I use to make this? First of all, I use Sublime Text. And this is a great text editor. This is my source code for this game at the moment. This is a great text editor that's really lightweight, and I can just run the game directly from this because it has its own little build system. So this acts sort of like an Atari integrated development environment. This is written in a language called Atari Basic. And Atari Basic is sort of like Basic, and it compiles it to assembly language for the Atari. So it makes it really easy to start writing because you don't have to learn assembly. As a consequence of using Atari Basic, I'm learning assembly anyway. So, like for example, somewhere in here there's a pile of assembly. I don't know. Anytime you see this yellow, this is assembly that I've written into Basic, sort of inline. It's a great feature. You could write your entire game in assembly, but it would take longer. And this is easier to learn to start with. That's one thing I use: Sublime Text, Atari Basic. What else? A Harmony cartridge. I'll put that on video in a minute if you want to get started with that. It makes writing games a lot easier. I'm using a Atari kernel called DPC+. DPC? I think it's DCP, DP, something. It's something, starts with a D, it has a P in it, and there's a plus. And that just allows you a bit more features than you normally would get when you're just writing straight Atari using Atari Basic. What else? Atari Basic. Well, you need an Atari emulator. I'm using Stella for this. It's a great emulator, and the people who are making these tools to write Atari games with, they're also editing and making changes to Stella, which is the Atari emulator that support, testing your game on Stella. So Stella is really the only choice when it comes to making a game in Atari Basic and making sure it works mostly like it does on real hardware. The last thing you're going to need is a cartridge to test your game on a real Atari. So I guess you need a real Atari too. This is only if you're really serious about it. You can make an Atari game directly in the emulator without any hardware at all, and you'll probably get it right. People will play it, they'll tell you if it doesn't work right or whatever. But if you're really serious about making a really good Atari game, you should get a Harmony cartridge and a real Atari. Real Ataris, they're not that hard to come by. eBay, they're pretty expensive, but you can usually find them, in a thrift store or, I don't know, your local classified ads. They're everywhere. There are millions and millions and millions of Ataris. You shouldn't have any trouble finding one if you're looking for one. As for the Harmony cartridge, I'll put a link to that. You can get those at Atari Age. They're pretty expensive, but they also allow you to play any Atari game on your Atari without needing the cartridge. You can just load the cartridge images onto the Harmony cartridge and play them on your Atari.